Did you know that your flood cover can also cover up to 7 days from the actual flood? We're going to talk about that and other interesting things about your flood cover today. What is up? You're watching Tito Talks non-life insurance discussions with me, your favorite Tito Miguel, who loves to make non-life insurance topics easier to understand for both agents and clients. Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. Did you like what I did to my place? I just finished installing some new wallpaper. Put in a little bit of minimalist design. I was going for minimalist, trying hard audio file. Did you think I pulled it off properly? Let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think. Also, if you're not too busy, please subscribe to my channel. We could always use the additional subscribers to learn more about non-life insurance here in the Philippines. So glad to have you guys here today. And as promised in our intro, we are going to be talking about your flood cover. 3 very important things you have to remember about the last of the allied perils that you can get to cover your property. If you missed our last 2, wherein we talked about earthquake and uh, uh, flood, earthquake and flood, I'm gonna link those 2 right up here on the screen right there. You can check out our playlist for that. Or if you're lost and you're looking for motor car insurance or personal accident insurance, playlists are right up here as well. You'll also find links to the playlist down in our description as well to point you in the right direction. So without further ado, let's get into our promised content for today. Also, please stay tuned throughout the whole video because we are always, as always, going to share our word of the day, and you wouldn't want to miss that. We're going to add up to our vocabulary and our pronunciation skills. Now, when it comes to talking about floods, which is part of the 3 allied perils which you can get in connection with your fire and lightning insurance, it's very important that we have to define our terms first. What do we mean when we say flood? And if you ask any Filipino, they probably really know what a flood is. Most of us have already gone through floods on our own, whether they would have been at school, whether they would have been at home, or whether it would have been at any other place in which we live. Floods have a very standardized definition when it comes to the fire policy. And it's a very technical one, so to speak, as floods are defined as the inundation of land not usually covered by water. So it's wherein water gets into places where it's not supposed to be. So where water is not supposed to be, it's getting in there as a consequence of the event. Now, when it comes to flooding, though, it's very, very important to remember that flood cover is completely separate from your typhoon cover. Although, yes, the 2 are very synonymous with each other. Every time you have a typhoon, yep, you're going to be expecting a flood, especially here. But when it comes to insurance, though, you can have a typhoon cover without flood. But you can have floods even if there's no typhoon, which brings us to our first point. That first point being, you can have floods without typhoons, and therefore, if you don't have a typhoon, what else could cause a flood? Well, there are a couple of things actually besides the typhoons themselves which create one major reason or causes of floods. Another reason could be the an extraordinarily high tide, which actually affects people living near large bodies of water, such as lakes, such as rivers, such as oceans. So if you're living near the coast side, you are at higher risk from flood as compared to other people that aren't living quite near or who live in metropolitan areas that are far away from large bodies of water. Therefore, you could expect that flood cover near coastal areas may be almost impossible to get, or if you do get flood cover, near these particular areas, you're looking at very, very high premiums for the actual cover because you're at a bigger risk as compared to as if you're not located near these places. But of course, high tides aren't the only cause of your flooding. Also, you can get floods by the bursting or overflowing of dams, rivers, reservoirs, man-made structures that are designed to hold water, wherein if in the case that these structures overflow with water and the overflow is not controlled or is not contained, the flood water could actually end up in metropolitan areas or in the areas nearby. So even if you're not away, or even if you are away or situated far from the oceans or the rivers or the lakes, if you're located near a dam, if you're located near any of these types of structures, then yes, you are at risk as well from flooding. Besides typhoons as well. Now, isn't that interesting? Second point that we're going to talk about is the fact that flood cover also shares the same characteristic as typhoon cover in the sense that flood cover can also cover a period of 7 days after the actual flooding has occurred, which is a little bit more tricky to determine. How do you know if damages have occurred onto your household or onto your property if, let's say, the flood already occurred 1 day prior? Well, this could refer to other hidden damages within your household, especially within your structure. As you will note, water has some very, very unique characteristics, especially when it's mixed with mud, especially when it's mixed with other forms of debris and other chemicals and substances that come from the outside. And this could actually affect the integrity of your structures, your support, your pillars, your walls, which could not immediately show right after or during the flood. It could actually show once the water has dried up, once the flooding has subsided, and damages start to show. In this case, you can count on the same benefit as typhoon cover, wherein damages can still be attributed to the flood within a period of 7 days from the flood itself. Now, isn't that useful? And then finally, very, very interesting point though, if you'd care, a flood cover, although it is separate from a typhoon cover, if you do plan to get flood cover to cover the contents of your household, yes, you can cover your contents as well, which is probably what most people are concerned about. You can only get your flood cover in conjunction with the typhoon cover. So if you want coverage for the internals or the internal properties or internal things inside your house, you're going to have to get typhoon cover as well. Hindi po pwedeng wala si typhoon kapag gustong ipa-cover ng flood ang loob po ng bahay. Which means it's actually a good idea for most Filipinos to get typhoon and flood cover. Now, although floods can be caused not just by typhoons but by the other reasons explained earlier, most of the time, and when I say most of the time, that probably means 90% of the time, your flooding will mostly be caused by typhoons, even if you're located in a metropolitan city or in a very urbanized city, which is away from any dams, any rivers, or any lakes. This is because typhoons, unlike rivers, reservoirs, dams, and and oceans, they can choose where to go. And sometimes you get unlucky that the typhoon chooses to go right through your city, bringing along with it heavy winds, bringing along with it heavy rains, and an increased chance of flooding. Which is why it is important for agents to enumerate the various reasons that you could have floods, but nonetheless emphasize the importance of having both a flood and a typhoon cover to your clientele. While clients may not immediately recognize that flooding is not directly correlated or is not only caused by typhoons, flood cover is still just as important as typhoon, as you can still encounter floods even if your area isn't usually visited by typhoons on a regular basis. And like I said, as agents, it is our duty as educated and more informed individuals in the insurance industry to make sure that we also not just upgrade our client's standard of living, but also upgrade the level of knowledge that they have regarding insurance. It's a very important thing to note that during the last quarter of 2019, insurance penetration of the GNP was only pegged at a little below 2%. And that means not a lot of Filipinos are getting insurance. particularly home insurance for themselves. Is it because they don't know a lot, or is it because they don't trust the company? It could be any number of reasons. But as agents, it's not just our duty to be able to sell insurance to our clients, but to also increase their knowledge so that we can improve these numbers moving on forward. Imagine what would happen if Filipinos were more conscientious, and more willing to invest in insurance. There'd be less people degrading their lifestyle based on because of not based on because of accidents affecting their income. Savings get wiped out in an instant when houses get flooded, when houses get burned down. Life savings could go right away out the window, and potential income could go right out the window when people get injured, when property gets damaged. Insurance allows our customers to maintain their level of lifestyle even in the worst situations. And I can guarantee you guys, no one would ever want to sacrifice their level of living because of things that are beyond their control. And that is exactly what insurance is for, ladies and gentlemen. Now, don't forget, I also promised you guys a word of the day, and we used it earlier as well, if in case you missed it. This is the word known as conjunction. The word conjunction refers to an instance of two things happening at the same time, or two things occurring at the same time. Remember what we said earlier? You can only get flood cover for your internal properties in conjunction with your typhoon coverage, meaning they have to be covered at the same time. Now that we know what it means, let's add our schwas, let's add our intonations, and make sure that we pronounce this word properly. Say it with Tito one more time. I'm going to show the word on the screen. Conjunction. And in here, you'll notice that we've got a lot of schwas involved, as in every syllable may schwa. So I hope this emphasizes the point I mentioned earlier, or the point I mentioned during our English Monday session, wherein we talked about the schwa, that you'll find it in a lot of common words in insurance. And mastering this sound will really help you sound more confident when you talk about insurance to your clientele. I.e., let's try that again. Conjunction. And take note, the T-I-O-N, 99% of the time, you will have to pronounce it exactly as that. Shin. Shin. Say it with your Tito one more time. Conjunction. Doesn't that sound better? Thank you so much for joining us up here today. I'd like to thank my sponsors, Lazada, for my headsets in the display right up on back, and for my new wallpaper as well, which took me several hours to set up, but I'm glad that is right up and running. You no longer have to see the hideous green and dirty wall behind me anymore. What else should I add to decorate my background? Let me know in the comments as well. Let me know what you think. Once again, this is your favorite Tito Miguel saying, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.